Hello, my name is Wes McDermott, and in this video we're going to talk about MyLT for Unity developers. We're going to focus on asset creation and workflow, so let's get started by taking a look at some preferences and sending objects to Unity. So what I want to do is just kind of show you just my general kind of scene setup here, and it's nothing earth-shattering, just a few preferences. So first thing we'll do is we'll just click the space bar to open up the hotbox, and then we'll go to Window. I'm going to go to Settings, Preferences, and then Preferences. And first thing is we'll just go to settings and just want to bring your attention to my working units. So they're set to centimeter by default. We'll talk about that in a bit. Also, the world coordinate system is set to up axis Y. That's by default, which matches Unity. So that's really nice. And then we'll come over here to polygons and our edges. So what I do is I usually set this to soft and hard. So with this set to standard, let me just show you what this does. So I'm just going to shift right click to open up a marking menu, and I'm going to just create a polysphere right here on my grid. So I'm just going to drag this onto the grid, and now we have this polysphere. If I deselect this guy, you can see that all of the normals are soft. So let's select it again. This time let's go into here. I'll just right click and just choose edge. So now we're in edge selection mode. I'm going to double click to select a few edge loops. I'm going to come up here to normals, and I'm going to harden these edges. So now we have some hard edges. Let's go back to object mode. You can see that we do have some hard edges, or a mix of hard and soft edges. If we select this again though, you can see that on our wireframe, it's very hard to tell, the difference between what edges that we're looking at. So everything, basically all the edges are shaded with this solid line. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. I'm going to go back over to my settings and my preferences here, and go back to polygons, and like I said, I like to keep this on soft and hard, so we'll then go ahead and save this. Now this is going to show a difference between the soft and hard edges. So again, let's just create another polysphere. We'll just drag this guy out here on the grid. Right at the default here, you can see that all the soft edges are shaded with this dotted line. So again, if we just right click, we go into edge mode, and we select these edge loops. We'll do the same thing again. We'll just harden these edges, and then we'll go back into our object mode and select. Now you can see that we have a really nice visual difference between hard and soft edges. So hard edges are drawn with this solid line, and soft edges are drawn with this dotted line. So again, it's just a nice visual cue here, and that's just the way that I keep that set up. Another thing that I do is if we're just working here inside for modeling, just doing asset creation, I like to get rid of some of these UI areas that I don't need. So what I'll do is just again hold down the space bar. I'll come over here to my hotbox controls, and I'll just click just right outside of this area. So basically in this kind of blank area, and now I'll get another marking menu that allows me just to kind of disable some things. So I'm not going to be doing any animation, so let's get rid of our time slider. Let's also get rid of our range slider. And so now you see that we can actually kind of just clear up the UI. We don't need any of that kind of, our time frame stuff. So it's just going to keep our window just a bit more clear for us. And then finally, one other thing that I want to talk about, we're going to come over here to Windows, Settings, Preferences. We'll come back to our preferences again, and we will come back over to our polygons, and I want to talk about this backface culling. So by default, backface culling is set to off. And so whenever we create an object, it's always going to have two sides. So you will be able to see, both the front and back of a polygon. And that's not really typically how Unity works. I do leave this off so that I do see that in mind, because sometimes through some modeling operations, it's kind of helpful just to be able to, if you rotate the model behind and see behind it, be able to select some vertices and things like that. But what you'll see is that you can actually toggle this value very easily. So let's just say, for instance, we have, let's just grab ourselves a polycube this time. So we have this polycube. I'm going to come into my face mode. I'll select a face, and we'll delete it. So now you can see that as we kind of, rotate around in our viewport, because backface culling is set to off, we can see both sides of the faces, so front and back. Now, if we want to, we could actually, so let's say if we just select this single object here, I can actually just, out here in the viewport, just shift right click, and I can come all the way down here to polygon display, and I can say toggle backface culling. So I could say just turn that off, and now you can see that backface culling is disabled. And that's typically the way I'll work with it. I don't really create my objects, because as you can see, this could become, sort of problematic when you're working. So even if we go into vertex mode, it's really hard to see, like if I wanted to, maybe try to select some vertices through here, it's kind of hard to see, what you're actually working with. So I'll typically will just select this item, use my polygon display, and I will just toggle backface culling to leave that on and off. So again, just something to keep in mind because once you're inside of Unity, that backface culling is going to be off. Okay, so now let's talk about actually getting our objects from MyLT into Unity, and that's actually really simple. We have a command here, so we go to File, there's actually a Send to Unity, and you can see that we have All, Selection, and we have the ability to set a Unity project. Now, I feel like this Send to Unity is probably the best way to work because there is no polygon cap when you use this Send to Unity command. So what it does is it creates an FBX file in the background, sends it directly to your Unity project, and like I said, there's no polygon cap when you do this. So first thing you'll want to do is just go ahead and set your Unity project, and in this case I just have a little MyLT project I created, and we'll just hit select. So now we've set that, and then I can easily just select one of these items here. I can go to File, and I can actually say Send to Unity, Selection, and that's just going to open up here my FBX dialog. I could actually go through and set any kind of settings here that I want to work with. So for instance, if I want to look with animation, I can choose to include animation. I can bake animation before I go. For my deformed models, you can see that here with Unity 4.3, we have the ability to work with blend shapes. So here we can actually have our blend shapes import. And so in this case, I'll just select all and then hit Export Selection. And there we go, all done. That FBX is now sitting inside of my Unity project file, and we'll look at that here in just a moment. Now, in terms of workflow, something you can do to help speed this process up is to create yourself a shelf. So here we have several shelves that are available to us, and each one of these shelves are basically just, well, it's a shelf that you can actually put tools and things like that. So common tools that you use within LT often, you can actually group these underneath these shelf commands here, or these shelves tabs. So let's just go ahead and make one real quick. Let's hit this drop down arrow, and let's go to New Shelf. And I'm going to call this one Unity. So now we have ourselves a little Unity shelf. And it's real easy to add commands to this. So for instance, let's go ahead and add our Unity command. So I'm going to hold down Control-Shift. I'm going to File. I'm going to Send to Unity. And then I'm just going to just click on All. And you can see that that gets sent right here as a command onto that shelf that we just created. So we'll do the same thing. We'll hit Selection, and then we'll do Set Unity Project. So now, if I want to send this object, I can just select my object, and I can hit Selection, and now I can just have that same dialog or that command fire for me, so I don't have to actually go up through the UI and do that. And there's actually several commands that I use often that I do this with. So for instance, if I wanted to, again, I'll hold down Control-Shift, I'll go to Modify, and I want to make sure that I have my freeze transformations on here. I'm going to go over to my Modify and put my center pivot as well, and then finally my edit, delete all by type, history. These are just a few commands that I just kind of have on this little Unity shelf here. And so like I said, it just makes it a little easier to get to some common tabs we have. Now we can actually take this a step further, and this is what I do with my actual Maya projects. So what we'll do now is we'll create ourselves a marking menu that we can actually quickly access these commands. So within Maya, a lot of the commands are very gestural, in the sense that, like, if I want to basically go and do some operations on this, I can actually just hold down Shift, right click, and you can see that I have the ability to activate the Sculpt Geometry tool, insert edge loops, append polygon tool, all kinds of commands. And so you don't have to constantly go up and go hunting through all the UI. You can actually utilize a lot of these marking menus, and you can create your own as well. So let's just do that real quick. Let's just go ahead and hit space bar. We'll get our hot box, and we'll go to Window, and here we'll go over to our, let's see, let's go to our Settings Preferences, and we'll actually go to our Marking Menu Editor. And so I'm going to just create myself a new one real quick. So we'll say create a marking menu, and I'll call this guy Unity. And so now I have the ability to just simply drag and drop commands onto this. So first thing I'll do is I'm just going to middle mouse click and drag now from my shelf and just drag these commands on here. So I'm going to say all, here's my selection. While I'm doing this here, I'll also put my freeze transformation on here, my center pivot, and then also my delete history. So we have these guys here. Here in this area, if we just use the left mouse button, we can do a kind of a little preview or a test of what this box is going to look like. Now that we have this, we'll click Save, and we'll close this little window down here, and you can see that here in our marking menus, this guy Unity is all ready for us to use. So the next thing we'll do is for Use Marking Menu In, which you notice that it says Not Set. Let's just go ahead and click this and just say Hotkey Editor, because we want to actually put a hotkey to this, and we'll apply settings, and then we'll close this guy. Then we'll also bring up our hotbox again. We'll go to our setting preferences, and this time we'll go to our hotkey editor. And now we have our hotkey. Now this is, you can actually configure MyLT any way that you want, use any kind of hotkeys you want, but I'm going to come over here to my user marking menus, and you can see that I have this Unity Press and Unity Release. So with Unity Press selected for my key, all I got to do is just type a key in here. So I'm going to put U for Unity. That's pretty unique there. And I'll hit Assign. Now, Maya's going to say here, your marking menu will not work correctly unless you also attach the release hotkey. Do you want me to set this up for you? Well, yes, that's very nice of you, Maya. Please do. All right, so now we have that set up. So next thing we'll do is we'll just hit save. And yeah, we get a little warning here. A new hotkey assignment may not take effect until next time Maya's launched, but it's going to work. So here we go. If we go ahead and hit U and left click, you can see now we got this cool little marking menu with some of our commands. So now I'm working and I select this guy, I hold down U and I hit selection, and now I can easily just select the hall and just go ahead and put a name on this if I want, hit export selection, and now we've got this over into Unity. It's just sitting there waiting for us to go into our Unity project and work with it. So it's just a real quick way of being able to access a lot of common tools that you use inside of Maya. Alright, so we've discussed how to get our objects over to Unity from MyLT. It's actually a really straightforward process. So the next thing I want to talk about is scale. So every 3D application basically internally works with its own measurement system, so scales are different between all 3D applications, and that makes our job as 3D artists really fun because we're the ones that get to actually have to convert between all these different formats and applications. However, in our case with MyLT and Unity, it's actually quite simple, and it really comes down to a single setting, which is the scale factor. So let's just jump over to Unity real quick. And look, there's our mesh that we just sent over just a moment ago. So you can see that was just sitting right here ready for us to work with here inside of Unity. With here in our assets, I'm going to select that mesh item. I'm going to come over to our our inspector and look at our import settings. And we have this very important setting here called scale factor. And in Unity, by default, it's always 0.01. And so all this scale stuff is really just comes down to, like I said, just a matter of, what number do I put in for this scale factor. So let's just jump back over to Maya and let's talk about that for a moment. So here's something that that's a secret. Okay, the secret is that units don't mean anything. Units are arbitrary. They're whatever you want them to be. It's your game, it's your world, so units can be whatever they want. If you want one unit to equal 10 centimeters, then that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want one unit to equal 1 meter, that's perfect. Nothing wrong with that. It's your world, you decide that. One of the things to think about, though, is when you're building assets is to, build these assets. You want to work with real-world scale, especially if you're using any type of physics. That way, it just makes, those calculations a bit easier to work out. However, like I said, and as you'll see here in just a moment, it's really just completely arbitrary. So let's do this. Let's actually go and we'll hit spacebar. Let's go over to our preferences again. And let's take a look at the settings. And like I said earlier in the video, we talked about our working units are set to linear. Now here inside of Maya, we can actually change this to whatever we want. We can say millimeter, centimeter, meter, and so on. And honestly, I don't ever change this. I keep this at centimeter no matter what. Maya internally works in centimeters, and Maya is happy working in centimeters, and things work out pretty nice when you keep this. So I would recommend never changing this setting from centimeter. Don't worry about, meters or whatever, because like I said, the units you create are completely arbitrary. Okay, so let's just demonstrate this. Let's select this wall, and we'll hit F. We'll focus this selection. And I'm going to go ahead and turn wireframe on shaded. Okay, so we want to be able to see these vertices. And we're going to snap a distance tool to these vertices to measure this wall. So let's go to Create. Let's go to Measure Tools and our Distance tool. And we'll just kind of zoom in on this guy, and we'll try to find ourselves a vertex that we can utilize. So let's do this. Let's just hold down V, and we'll just notice that I have V on. We're doing a vertex snapping. So if you look right over here at the top of the UI, you can see that our vertex snapping is enabled. And let's just click on a vertice, so we snap that. Let's come all the way down here to the bottom, and let's do something similar here to this. So hold down V again, and we'll just vert snap that tool. Let's zoom out here, and you can see that we're working with a measurement of 323 units. Well, we won't worry about the rest of the stuff with the decimal, so we'll just say 323. Let's go back to our settings and preferences. And so if we go to our settings, our working units are set to linear and centimeter. So basically we could say this is 323 centimeters. Now if we go ahead and just open up our calculator here, and here let's just clear this out, and we say 323, and then we multiply that by 0.01. So that 0.01 again is our Unity scale factor, and we just hit equals. You can see that we get 3.23 meters is what this is working towards. So we'll go ahead and just close this. If we were to come into Maya and then change this over here to meter, so you can see our grid changed. Let's just move our preferences here out of the way, and let's just reselect here our distance tool, and you can see that that recalculates for us. And you'll notice that it now says 3.23, which is correct. So we can look at this wall and say, okay, this wall is now 3.2 meters. However, with the attribute editor here already opened, we have our distance dimension tool here selected. I want to bring your attention here to this distance field. Notice that it still says 323. So internally, Maya is still working under centimeters. And so that just kind of proves what I was saying. You know, each 3D application just basically internally has this measurement system, and it's usually best to work in the measurement system that application is using. So in our case, it's centimeters, and that's what I do. Instead of, if I want to create this wall here, and I want to keep a wall, and I say I want this to be, you know, 3.2 meters, I don't really worry about saying, well, let me convert that to centimeter, and then let me, you know, type in 323 centimeters and all that kind of jazz. I don't really worry about that. Also, like I said before, because it's all arbitrary, it's whatever you want to make it up. And so, like I said, the most important factor here, if we go back over to Unity, is this scale factor. So the reason why that comes in and that works is because we're using this scale factor of 0.01. And that basically gives us this correct proportions here inside of Unity. Now, let's go back to Maya LT, and let's do this again. Let's go over to our setting preferences. This time I'm going to change ourselves back here to centimeter, and we'll just go ahead and just leave that be. Again, if we just kind of re-enable that dimension tool, it refreshes. We're back at that 323. So now I'd just like to show you how I do it. This is just my workflow for working with units inside of my LT. It is very important to create your assets at real-world scale, especially if you're using dynamics. So you want to make sure that you know, the calculations are going to work correctly or work as expected. So you do want to work with that real-world scale. However, the secret is that it is all just proportional. As long as you build the objects proportionally, the scale factor, when you bring that into Unity, is going to determine the actual scale anyways. And so you can actually just work with basically a made-up value that's easiest for you, and that's what I do. So I basically say 1 Maya unit is equal to 1 meter. So let's just come in here, and first I'm going to do is just going to create a polycube. So I'll just deselect what we have out here, and shift right click, and I'll do polycube, and I'll just drag this guy out here into the grid. So we'll just get something here. We'll hit F to focus this in. I'll go over here to the inputs here within my channel box, and I've got my width, height, and depth. Let's just left click and drag over all these input boxes so that we can edit them all at one time. Let's hit 1, and now we basically have a cube that is 1 unit by 1 unit by 1 unit. And let's also just kind of zero out our translate X, Y, and Z. And then again, we'll grab this guy and we'll focus it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to just scale this wall in just a little bit like this. Okay, so let's go back over here to our input box. So we have history on this, this creation of this box. Let's go ahead and just change it. Instead of scaling it, let's just change it here. So for my height, I want this to be, let's say, 3.2. So we're going to say 3.2 units. Okay, so I do that, and you can see that we now have a box that's 3.2 units. For width, let's just put this at maybe 0.5. Or excuse me, not width, I mean depth. Let's just do this at 0.5. And then for our width, I don't really know, I didn't measure it, so let's just, you know, just drag something out so, you know, it just looks like that. But really what we were talking about was our height. So notice here that we have our height of 0.32. Let's just go ahead and just put this guy, we're just going to put him just right here so that he rests right on top of the grid. So now we have this new wall that we created. And like I said, I'm thinking internally in my own mind that 1 unit is equal to 1 meter. So now if we go and we do a create measure tool, a distance tool, and I'm going to do the same thing again. So hold down V. I'm just going to snap to this vertex here, and hold down V again. We'll snap to this vertex here. And now you can see that my wall height is 3.2. So if we pull this out, you can see that this guy is obviously dramatically smaller than this wall over here. So we've got this really huge gap between sizes. Again, I'll focus this in and just bring to your attention that, you know, I'm still thinking 3.2. So in my system, the way that I work internally is I say, well, every single unit is equal to 1 meter. So to me, when I'm building this asset here inside of my LT, I'm thinking, well, this guy is 3.2 meters tall. So let's select this guy, and let's go ahead and just zero out everything. So we did do some scaling on this. So let's just go ahead, just freeze our transforms and delete our history on this. So again, we used our little handy shelf here to do that. We have this guy selected. Let's use our marking menu. So we'll hold down U and left click, and then let's just export this selection. And I'm going to call this wall. So we'll just come in here and say wall, and we'll just export this selection over to Unity. Let's go ahead and go back into Unity and take a look. Our wall has come into place. Now, we have this wall. We know that we have a difference in our scale factor. So basically, it's 100 times. So it's centimeters to meters. So just think of my LT internally centimeters, Unity internally meters. So it's where we're getting this 0.01. So for the scale factor, when I use my system of just 1 unit is equal to 1 meter, I'll change the scale factor here just to 1. And actually makes more sense than 0.01. So I'm basically saying, okay, no change here, no scale factor change to this. And I'm gonna hit apply. And now if I take this and I just drag and drop this guy right here into the Unity scene, you can see that he's actually the same size as this. Here, let's just illustrate that again. Let's pull this guy out and let's grab this guy. Let's make sure we grab this wall here. Let's see. Let's grab this wall. We'll do the same thing. Let's just send this guy over. So we'll say selection. And let's change this to wall underscore 2. And we'll export this guy over to Unity. And let's take a look. So here's wall 2. Again, wall 2, we're going to leave his scale factor alone. Let's drag and drop him into place here. And let's see. Let's zero out his Y. Just kind of zero out some of these transforms here. Well, here, we'll just grab it. And we'll just kind of vert snap this guy down here inside of Unity. Let's grab this guy and let's just drag him over, and we'll do the same thing. We'll just kind of vert snap him into place. So here we go. 2 completely different sizes inside of my LT, but once they come into Unity, it all is the same thing. It all comes out in the wash, so to speak. So it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. You could choose to work at the actual real world scale as this model was created in, so exactly 323 centimeters, or you could choose to do it this way, where you go through and you just utilize your own arbitrary unit system. So for instance here, 3.2 units, and as long as the proportions are the same, it'll work out just fine. And so you can see that once you come over here to Unity and you change your scale factor, everything is the same. So the way I do it, again, like I said, is I just change it to centimeters, keep it that way, and I just go under the assumption that 1 unit is equal to 1 meter.